Hating.
We conclude our Untitled Fighting Gem special with a look at Ating, a development team that's been pretty busy recently. Ating started out as one division of Rising Ating, a company founded in 1993 by a mix of new developers and veterans from an older developer named Compile, who were joined in time by other developers who left a third company named Toplan. Yeah, you'll have to forgive me for the pronunciation, I'm not a shooting game buff. The majority of developers who migrated to Rising Ating were quite experienced at making arcade shooting games. Toplan, in particular, had made a name for themselves with shoot-em-ups. Well, they made other companies' names, seeing as how they didn't get top billing for their work until halfway into the company's lifespan, but they were trendsetters for the genre as a whole. And when the company went under in 1994, the staff members who didn't end up going to Ating eventually created other splinter companies, such as Cave or Takumi Corporation, all of which went on to build upon and refine the styles that were developed at Toplan, even actually finishing one of the latter company's games in one instance. And while Compile wasn't as prominent in shooting circles, they had put out a few entries in the genre too. So when some of these experienced shooting aficionados joined the Rising division, it soon became the premier half of the company. I wouldn't say it was dominant, per se, but it was definitely the more productive of the two, and made and produced many different shooting games between 1993 and 2000. Ating, for its part, occasionally acted as a publisher for Rising's arcade games, and helped out on games for Rising and other development teams, such as Hudson Soft. Ating actually worked with Hudson Soft for quite a few games. Their earliest work was a Tetris clone with Bomberman characters, but their most notable collaboration was the Bloody Roar series, which started in 1997 with Bloody Roar, or Beasterizer as it was named in Japan. I always get a kick out of that name. Seriously, it's just such a 90s name, such a shooter-y name. Just slap an Izer onto the word, it'll work. In fact, I'm starting to realize that there's a lot of history between shooting, puzzle, and fighting games. I guess that's something to think about. Anyway, while Rising gained prestige, the market for 2D shooters began to shrink. And in time, the company was forced to fold its Rising division into the Ating division around 2000. From then on, the company worked on a variety of licensed titles, with support from various other game developers. And as much as I hate cramming narratives into places they don't belong, if I had to describe Ating's work from 2000 onward, I'd compare them to the other companies I covered in this special series. Arica managed to beat their own path. Dream Factory stuck to whatever work they could get, and Opus eventually came into their own as a mobile developer. But Ating was forced out of its original niche and adapted to working on mainstream games with mainstream conventions. However, when it came to fighting games, Ating managed to carve out a new niche, repurposing popular mechanics into their own style, and then, for better or worse, reusing them for a bunch of other games. Ating had already developed a set of staple animations for the Bloody Roar series, and from Bloody Roar 3 onwards, they would reuse those animations unless instructed otherwise. And they did it a lot. People who have played a lot of their fighters can probably recognize some of their most frequently reused animations, such as liver blows and big boots. A few exceptions to this trend can be found in some of their early work, like Battle Station DON. DON was a Smash clone, and as such, there was no real need to pad out character move lists, and since it was a licensed work, the developers had a lot of actual canon material to work with when throwing in moves. Zatch Bell Mamoto Battles is another exception, since there wasn't more to that game than using short canned combos and shooting projectiles at one another. The Tatsunoko vs. Capcom games and Marvel vs. Capcom 3 games that they developed also avoided this trend, as Capcom, Marvel, and Tatsunoko all oversaw development of these games very closely. So there are various restrictions on what could be done, what characters could appear, what characters couldn't appear, what colors could and couldn't be used, what moves characters were allowed to use, what hand movements some characters had to deal with, all sorts of micromanaging. Outside of those games, though, they frequently reused animations. Castlevania Judgment, Fate Unlimited Codes, the Naruto Clash of Ninja series, the Bleach Heat the Soul series, the Kamen Rider Climax Hero series, all had frequent reuse of staple 18's animation. 18 is also very generous with their hitboxes. It seems like the company will often map out hitboxes or hit spheres or what have you to make sure a move hits in most situations, and only change them if they cause serious problems down the line. It's practically a feature in the Clash of Ninja series. Big hitboxes, generous hit stun, and very long OTG windows means that 18's games are really rough around the edges, but actually somewhat easy to get into. The thing about that, though, is that those aspects actually lend themselves towards pushing the execution ceiling up a bit, because the more you can get away with, the more the things you get away with become standard, and so on and so forth. Generally, everything works out, though. Generally. Left to their own devices, 18 will also use wide open planes with invisible walls. It's not normally worth noting, as many other 3D fighting games do that sort of thing, but I found it somewhat impressive that when they made Super Climax Heroes, they managed to develop a flashy, free-roaming fighter that was actually still kind of closed off. That can be explained by the fact that 18 didn't make many new stages that took advantage of the new movement style, but then that goes back to how 18 reuses a lot of stuff. In some respects, Castlevania Judgment was more open than Super Climax Heroes, and that wasn't even the game's gimmick. Still, it could be worse. They could have decided to fill the empty space with cheap plastic furniture. Another mechanic they've used from time to time is a slight tweak of the Roman cancel mechanic from the Guilty Gear series. For lack of a better term, I call it the Y cancel, in reference to how it originated in the Clash of Ninja series, where you could cancel normals and change by pressing Y. As far as I know, it's only appeared in one other series, but it's something worth noting. Like the Roman cancels, Y cancels can be used to cancel moves, at the cost of some super meter. Unlike Roman cancels, however, Y cancels do not return players to a neutral position. It may return them to a special animation, or allow them to move directly afterwards, but it doesn't specifically pop you back into your neutral standing stance. They also can't be used to chain special moves, just normal moves and attack chains. On the plus side, they always cost 1/4 of whatever meter they're attached to. The first game in the Clash of Ninja series already had a reversal mechanic in place before Y cancels were introduced, so they balanced each other out, in a way. But Climax Heroes didn't have something as useful as substitution logs, so 18 settled for strict damage scaling, and in the case of Super Climax Heroes, they also added a burst mechanic. 18 has played around with different versions of cancellings and bursts in other games as well. To be polite, I will simply say that they have yielded mixed results and leave it at that. 18 still gets a lot of work, mainly from Capcom and Bandai Namco games. They've helped out with the 3DS versions of the mainline Monster Hunter series ever since Monster Hunter Tries update, and they developed the Batride War series. Granted, the latter's probably done and dusted, but that's still something. And so long as there's a licensed game that needs developing, 18 will probably continue to get work. I know that last sentence strikes terror into the hearts and minds of some of you viewers out there, but in my opinion, 18 is a good developer, and they've done a good job of transitioning from shooting games to fighting games. Plus, they continue to improve, so I look forward to what they'll come up with in the future. Well, that's the end of the special. I hope you folks enjoyed at least some small part of it, because I know I enjoyed making it. I only wish things went more smoothly, but what are you gonna do? I feel like I could do another one of these though, but it'd have to be in the far future.